I think people are realizing that, Chris, and people are buying gold and silver right now, not to get wealthy, but because it is and represents wealth. And in a world of asset prices that are so crazy overvalued, there's nothing on the planet that offers the argument that silver does.
Where we really examine if we could be wrong about the silver thesis. Obviously, I talk quite a bit about why I left Wall Street and why I became so interested in silver and covering the silver market. I've always done my best to provide objective coverage and not just say something that's unsubstantiated. And I actually spend a lot of time always trying to see if there's something I'm missing or there's somewhere I could be wrong. I know Andy Schectman does that as well. So in today's call, we'll really examine that and the thought process that goes in there, which I like to think that you will find helpful to point out that it's not just a matter of saying something just to get anybody else to do anything, but really the thought process that goes into that. So today we'll examine, could we be wrong about silver? Is there something that is going to hold the silver price down infinitely? And I think you'll find this conversation pretty genuine and helpful. So looking forward to bring that to you. Real quick before we get started, I did have a note from BlackRock Silver, who is bringing us today's show. And they did recently announce a technical report on their Tonopah West gold silver project, which was largely in line with the maiden resource estimate that they released a couple of weeks ago. No material differences in the technical report from what was disclosed on May 2nd. Although Andrew Pollard of BlackRock will be joining me over the weekend. We're going to talk with him with the details of what came out in the technical report. So, we have a lot of BlackRock shareholders in our audience and certainly some good things going on with their project, even at the current silver price, let alone if we do have a rebound and the price goes higher. So just wanted to pass that along, that their technical report is out. Link to that is in the description field below. And with that said, now let's dig into the silver market with Andy Schectman. Obviously, the big news this week was that the Fed did raise 75 basis points. I think it was the biggest hike since 1994, which set off its own set of issues back then. Seems like it's setting off its own set of issues this time as well. And curious, the customers that you talk to, are they buying metal? Are they selling metal? How are they looking at this? What is the tone out there and what are you hearing?
I think inflation is on the front page of everyone's mind. It really is. And you look at 2020, inflation was at 1.4%. We're already 4 times that rate where we are right now. But is the Fed really getting serious about it? It's interesting how the information leaks out to the public. In fact, I was talking to you a couple of nights ago, and you had heard about this, that it was going to be 75 basis points. And then right after that, you see JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs spokesmen are saying the same thing, when it was all along projected to be 50 basis points. But what is 75 basis points in the light of almost 9% inflation? Of course, excluding food, energy, and housing, the real metric of inflation is double digits for sure. Ask John Williams, he'll tell us that. I think people understand that the Fed is trapped, that they're caught, and they're caught in a quandary of death by hyperinflation or death by depression. And when you have asset prices where they are right now, and starting to shake as interest rates barely rise. Look at the 30-year mortgage as an example. It's over 6% right now. It's doubled in a year, and yet the federal funds rate had only gotten to 0.75%. Now that federal funds rate will be 1.5%, what does that mean? Paul Volcker in 1980 raised the federal funds rate to 19.75%. That's getting serious about inflation. What they're doing is pussyfooting and jawboning. And I guess we'll see how much the markets can really take. But I think people are realizing that, Chris, and people are buying gold and silver right now, not to get wealthy, but because it is and represents wealth. And in a world of asset prices that are so crazy overvalued, there's nothing on the planet that offers the argument that silver does. Of course, the price action doesn't support it. And we can talk about that if you'd like, and the manipulation surrounding it. But from a standpoint of utility in industry, where solar panels are supposed to double or triple in the next year or two, and the same thing with battery-powered vehicles, and in a digital and green application or world where digital and green applications are expanding, there isn't an asset on the planet that offers what silver does in the light of everything being blown up, silver is still under half of what it was. So that's why people are buying, because they're afraid. They see inflation, they see the frailty of their investments, and they realize silver is, even though it hasn't expressed itself yet, represents maybe the best value in the investment universe. I don't see anything that offers the value that silver does.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And I guess to take the other side of that, a lot of us have felt that's been the case for a while, some since 1980. And then certainly in the last couple of years, I think hopefully we've put a little more detail on it, the comments from Ross last year and otherwise. But it sometimes makes you wonder at the end of the day. I mean, I think we've learned in the last couple of years that it's not conspiracy theory that the world is controlled by a lot of these banks, and that, how deep you want to tie it to Klaus Schwab in this World Economic Forum. But, just living through the COVID thing, and it's like that realm of things that should happen, yet seems like they are manipulating it. That part was clear. And I guess there are some days where it's hard. How long does that go on for? You have the supply and demand fundamentals, which would suggest something, but I guess I'm wondering how you handle that, because it's something I think a lot about. And, I don't want to be giving out information that's not helpful to people. I don't know what else to make of this situation. It's not an ideal situation in general, and curious any thoughts you have on that.
I appreciate that, and I'm sure people listening do too. You're a human being, Chris. You have more courage than almost anyone in this space. In fact, you do have more courage. The only people that even rival it would be Silver Bill Murphy and Chris Powell, who have stood up to the cartel forever. But you stand up just as broadly and strongly as they do. And I think when you have invested as much emotionally and physically and mentally as you have into this industry, it's natural. I've been doing this for 30 years. It weighs on me too. Yet I keep coming back to my asset portfolio, which is almost entirely gold and silver, because I don't see a safer place to put it. And in the end, I think you'll be proven right. Along the way, it's tough. You have to have strong fingertips. You have to hang on. You have to trust your conviction. And ask yourself, why is it the most concentrated short position in any commodity traded on COMEX? Why do they exert so much effort to hold it down when the fundamentals are so extraordinary? And I think one of the things that make it difficult for silver to express itself is the dollar hegemony, where the dollar rules the roost and the government behind it pulls the strings. But what happens if all of a sudden the dollar loses its singular world reserve status? What happens if Saudi Arabia, who is already in negotiations with China to sell oil for yuan, just like Nigeria is already doing? What happens if we see an accentuation of what's going on with Russia? They're only accepting ruble or gold for their commodities. They just struck a deal with India to sell arms for rupee and ruble. How about the Belt Road Initiative with China connecting 85% or 80% of human population? And now there's this new route between Iran and India. What we are seeing is a de-dollarization, a move away from the dollar hegemony. And when that snaps, when that happens, things like the ability to manipulate the COMEX price, I think, will be a thing of the past. And the only reason all of these nations aren't bitching about it right now is because that is what they've been transitioning into. They have been the ones accumulating gold and silver. They have been the ones quietly de-dollarizing. So they play along the game. If you can't beat them, join them type of thing, until they are able to beat them. And they'll beat them by, I believe, challenging the dollar for singular world reserve status. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. I know that's not what you want. But look at it this way. The Chinese digital yuan has done close to $10 billion in transactions over the last year. With all of these countries coalescing together, Russia, China, India, South Africa, the likelihood, I believe, and these are all the biggest producers of gold and silver in the world, the biggest accumulators of it as well. what I believe will happen at some point is that they will challenge the dollar. They will issue a gold-backed or a commodity-backed BRICS nations currency on the back of the success that the Chinese have already had with their Belt and Road Initiative and their digital yuan. When something like that happens, when the dollar loses its hegemony, when the dollar loses its ability through sanctions and edict and governmental decree to control the markets, that's when it snaps overnight. Now, it's not fun waiting for it, and I understand and I respect your candor in telling the world that this weighs on you. Weighs on me too, and I think that makes you a human and makes you honest. But in the end, we'll be proven right. And I think there are very few things on the planet that offer the utility, the necessity, and the scarcity that silver does. In a world of blown up asset prices, it's the most undervalued asset on the planet. So being right sometimes means you're wrong until you're right. And I've experienced that a lot. Yeah, we may not have been right yet, but we will be. And mathematics and economics tell us we should have been right a long time ago. But this is a high stakes game, one that has high stakes players, and they've been very adept at creating this perception of reality that I think is getting harder and harder to do.